a Hong Kong Cantonese phonetic script with sinoglyph aesthetics. To begin, I will first talk briefly about written Cantonese, and then subsequently talk about the limitations of the existing Hong Kong Cantonese orthographies. I will then propose Jyutcitzi as a phonetic script for the construction of a dignified Cantonese orthography. And finally, to conclude the presentation, I will talk a little bit about the digital technology for Jyutcitzi, as well as some further online resources on it. So let's start. What exactly is written Cantonese? Well, as the name suggests, it involves the transcription of the vernacular Cantonese language, which is mutually unintelligible with Mandarin. However, unlike written Mandarin, written Cantonese is not standardized. And this brings us to the popular options for writing Cantonese, namely the Honzi-only and the Romanization-only orthography. As the name suggests, the Honzi-only orthography is one where a sinoglyph must be used for every written syllable. However, this brings us 5 main issues which will cause the eventual slow death of Cantonese. The first one is the easy conflation between Cantonese and Mandarin. Namely, there are no strong visual features which distinguish Cantonese from Mandarin, and this generates unnecessary discussion on whether Cantonese is a Mandarin dialect. Another implication of this issue is that it causes the continued sinification of Cantonese vocabulary and grammar, which is highly undesirable. The second issue concerns the undemocratic barriers which arise from the sinoglyph-only constraint. Notably, this barrier, which is shown in the middle of the slide, causes sinoglyph vocabulary to be blocked, and as a result, sinoglyph-bearing vocabulary are preferred over spoken Cantonese vocabulary because of economical reasons. And as a result, the sinoglyphs are the ones which drive the development of written Cantonese, as opposed to the spoken Cantonese language itself, which is highly undesirable. The third issue concerns the use of ad hoc sinoglyph solutions for novel vocabulary. So when a novel Cantonese word wants to enter the written language, this triggers the process of either sinoglyph creation or selection. And this is problematic because there are no simple default solution. There's no simple default solution for the systematic handling for the systematic creation or selection of sinoglyphs. Namely, the solutions are inherently ad hoc and require a significant skill and labor to create. The fourth issue concerns the fuzzy phonophores in sinoglyphs. This often manifested as a sinoglyph containing a mouth radical and phonophore, which you can see a bunch of examples on the right-hand side of the slide. In fact, these sinoglyphs are only used for their phonetic pronunciation. And so with that in mind, we can ask the following question. If the sinoglyph's goal is to only display phonetic values, why not do a better job at it? After all, Hong Kong Cantonese phonology is well studied. And finally, the Honzi-only orthography easily decomposes into the Honzi Latin script, which predominantly uses sinoglyphs, but also use an ad hoc and uncontrollable amount of English letters and words, as shown in red down in the text below. And it is precisely this Honzi Latin mixed script which has poor aesthetics because of the frequent appearance of English letters which look out of place among all of the sinoglyphs, together with the fact that English words have variable length, which directly conflict with the sinoglyph square block property. And as a result, it is this type of written Cantonese which has low prestige in terms of aesthetics. So given the 5 issues above, we can conclude that the Honzi-only orthography doesn't work in terms of for the development of written Cantonese in the long term. So how about the other option? Well, the Romanization-only orthography allows access to the full range of Cantonese syllables, and notably, you can freely construct new words in this orthography. But the main issue with this orthography is that it causes the rapid collapse of the existing sinoglyph Cantonese cultural capital, just kind of like how the Vietnamese layman can no longer access the Chu Nom and sinoglyph-related cultural capital. And it is precisely this issue which drastically reduces the soft power of Cantonese. So in summary, both of these are poor options in the long term. So East Asian language enthusiasts might ask, well, how about these block scripts which already exist in other East Asian languages? Well, they too also do not work because they do not cover the entire set of spoken Cantonese sounds, and they also and none of these scripts dignify Cantonese as an independent, self-sufficient language. And so to combat all these issues, we introduced Jyutcitzi. Inspired by the unorchestrated invention of phono-semantic sinoglyphs from Cantonese writers, Jyutcitzi is a homemade phonetic syllabic script, which is based on the Faancit system from the literary Sinitic. The principle of Jyutcitzi is simple. For the construction of a Jyutcitzi, you just first take the syllable, you first factorize it into the onset, final, and tone portions, which is the, and one here. You map them to Jyutcitzi components together with a spatial rule, which is determined by the onset component, and you subsequently use the spatial rule in order to aggregate all of the Jyutcitzi components into a single Jyutcitzi character. And in particular, here are the fixed set of onset components. As mentioned earlier, the onset component doesn't only just represent the onset sound of the syllable, it also dictates where the final component is placed in the Jyutcitzi. And this can either be in the form of a top-bottom spatial arrangement or a left-right spatial arrangement. And here are the sets of final components. Now you might think, there would be a lot of components. How can I memorize all of them? Well, in some sense, you don't really have to memorize all of them, because Jyutcitzi actually extends on the Readside Principle, and because of this, we basically have the reader guesstimate both sides of a Jyutcitzi in order to determine the pronunciation of a Jyutcitzi. And so to demonstrate this in a more concrete way, let's have a look at the example at the bottom left of the slide. So at the bottom left, we see a Jyutcitzi. And to read this character, all you have to do is read the left side in order to get the onset and the right side in order to get the final. And by doing this, you can combine the onset and the final bits of the pronunciation, which gives you zheng. And in combination with the dash at the top right corner, which means tone number 1, we can conclude that this Jyutcitzi has a reading of zheng. And as for marking tones in Jyutcitzi, you can add tone marks to the top right corner of the block, where tone marks can be optional in Jyutcitzi. And so down in the table below, we see the tick marks for the 6 tones in Cantonese. Since there are zero onset and 0 finals in English-derived Cantonese vocabulary, we basically need some sort of orthography to handle it in Jyutcitzi. And to do this, we basically add 3 dots we add 3 dots above of whatever component we're interested in. So for example, for a 0 onset with just an a, we just add 3 dots at the top and put the a component at the bottom. If it's just an s, then we put the 3 dots on the top and we add an s at the bottom, the component corresponding to s at the bottom. And it is the 0 onset and 0 final which enables the transcription of the existing sinoglyphless English loanwords in Hong Kong Cantonese. And here, to demonstrate the point, we list 3 examples, which are firm, aki, and ingli, which corresponds to the English words firm, archi, which is an abbreviation of the word architecture, and ingli, which is an abbreviation of English literature. English also has consonant clusters, and so to deal with this, we basically stack the consonants on the left in order to construct the consonant cluster, and we place the final block on the right. And to demonstrate how some cases where consonant clusters are used in Cantonese vocabulary, we've listed 3 of them here. Apart from the phonetics, Jyutcitzi can also be paired up with semantophores. And this can occur in both native Cantonese vocabulary and non-Sinitic Cantonese vocabulary. And because of the fact that the Jyutcitzi completely represents the phonetic value of the syllable, you can pair up a single Jyutcitzi with any possible semantophore without having to affect its pronunciation. And so this would lead to the democratization of semantophore pairing, which greatly increases the expressivity of Cantonese in writing. So you might ask, well, why do we want to use Jyutcitzi then? Well, firstly, it acts as a Cantonese-centric phonetic backup to the existing sinoglyph-based system, kind of how the hiragana or katakana works in Japanese. It also indirectly highlights parts of the language which makes it Cantonese. And in particular, so for Sinitic vocabulary, those can stay as sinoglyphs, but the non-Sinitic vocabulary need not necessarily stay as sinoglyphs. Notably, this allows one to accentuate grammatical particles in written Cantonese, whether it be via a descriptivist approach or a prescriptivist approach. And by using Jyutcitzi, we can also highlight foreign loanwords in Cantonese, notably the ones from English. And finally, by using Jyutcitzi, we can eliminate most of the ad hoc Latin characters and ad hoc sinoglyphs by using a system of spelling. So when might we use Jyutcitzi? Well, we can use it when we've forgotten a particular sinoglyph, just like how people write hiragana when they forget how to write a particular kanji in Japanese. We can also use it for glossing, and the effect of this is that we don't need to use romanization for glossing anymore, because there's no standard form of romanization. And this is a step towards making Cantonese a more independent language. The effect of using Jyutcitzi is basically that bunji hao, which literally translated into English means original sinoglyph study, becomes unnecessary in the sense that quarrels about forgotten or disputed Honzi is no longer an impediment for the development of Cantonese literature. And the result of this is that we are able to preserve Cantonese vocabulary and thus increase the visibility of Cantonese vocabulary, which means that there is a massive literature potential for the Cantonese language. Moreover, we can adapt Jyutcitzi for other languages with similar phonologies, such as Mandarin, Teochew, Japanese, Korean, English, and Latin. And we can also use Jyutcitzi as a form for importing vocabulary or borrowing vocabulary from other languages in the areas of science, mathematics, economics, finance, philosophy, you name it. A nice thing that falls out of Jyutcitzi is that now that there is a good way of a comprehensive way for the representation of phonetics, now we can just replace all these sound indicating mouth radical containing sinoglyphs with just the Jyutcitzi. And this would be a much better way of representing the phonetics for these characters. And because of the fact that Jyutcitzi has sinoglyph aesthetics, Jyutcitzi aesthetically fits with sinoglyphs, as shown in these sentences. And the result of this is that you are able to, and this basically creates a spectrum of writing styles, which ranges from the sinoglyph-only orthography to the Jyutcitzi-only orthography, where in the middle you can have a continuous range of different sinoglyph Jyutcitzi mixed scripts. In terms of technology, Jyutcitzi, there's a font for Jyutcitzi. There are a variety of fonts for Jyutcitzi, and there's also a RIM keyboard for typing Jyutcitzi on the computer, available at the link down below in the slide. Together with some website programming, we have also created a website which contains articles written in Honzi-Jyutcitzi mixed script, which can readily be browsed on the browser. And so to conclude this presentation, a Honzi-only orthography results in the slow death of Cantonese. A romanization-only orthography will cause the collapse of the Cantonese cultural capital. As a phonetic script with Honzi aesthetics, Jyutcitzi readily solves these problems. And combining the advantages of Honzi and Jyutcitzi, a Honzi-Jyutcitzi mixed script is currently the best option available for an independent and productive Cantonese writing system. And to achieve this technologically, we have provided a RIM keyboard as well as various fonts for everyone to try. And so in terms of resources online for Jyutcitzi, there is a PDF copy of the slides available in the Google Drive folder at the very top link. There's also a Cantonese article on the Cantonese Wikipedia, which talks about Jyutcitzi. For more written work relating to the theory and application of Jyutcitzi, you can also visit this Google Drive link. And in general, in order to contact us, you can find us at the Facebook page, or you can find us in the Telegram group link down at the bottom if you have any questions regarding Jyutcitzi or are just in general interested in Jyutcitzi. So this is the end of the presentation. Thanks for listening and have a great day. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.